Hey friend, you are listening to The Discerning Mother. This is for the woman of faith who wants to feel calm, grounded, and whole again without pretending that everything is fine. In these episodes, you will learn to understand your body, your nervous system, and the stories that you carry so you can become the woman that God had in mind. All right, let's dive in. All right, welcome back to the Discerning Mother podcast. Today I'm here with Vanda, and we've actually collaborated before a few times, so I'm excited for you to hear this chat. So Vanda is a functional medicine nurse and board-certified nurse coach who helps moms balance their hormones and overcome fatigue, which we all have, so that they can embrace motherhood with energy, confidence, and joy. With over a decade of experience as a registered nurse and advanced training in functional medicine, Vanda brings a root cause approach to hormone health that's practical, personalized, and mom-friendly. She blends functional lab testing like HTMA and Dutch with nervous system support, nutrition, and realistic lifestyle shifts that help her clients to feel like themselves again without restrictive protocols and overwhelm. All right, so welcome to the show, Vanda.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Brigid. I'm excited for us to get to chat again and be here to chat with your audience.
If you feel comfortable, can you share just like a little bit about like where you are, what your family looks like, that sort of thing, just to give listeners a little bit of an idea of what your experience is with all this?
Absolutely. So I live in Kentucky in a very small town, pretty rural area. I have been a nurse for over 11 years now. My husband, Blake, and I have been married for a little over 6 years, and we've got 4 kiddos together. So my oldest is 8 years old. Then we have a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old. So they, of course, keep us busy. We live on, I call it a farm, but it's really just a lot of land. We have about 37 acres here where we live. We don't have any animals on the property yet other than our dogs and a cat. We're too busy with the kids to have like cows and goats and things right now, but maybe in the future. And we love to be just like on our property and spending a lot of time outside. The kids love to be outside, thankfully. So we spend a lot of time outside. My kids are pretty involved in like sports and things. So when we're not doing that, we're here at home hanging out outside.
We live on 37 acres as well. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yes. And so how in the world did you get into this? Because going from a nurse to functional medicine nurse and board certified nurse coach, that's kind of a big jump. So how did you go from registered nurse to functional medicine world?
Yeah, so it's a lot of my own story and kind of my own need to have functional medicine in my life. And then a few years later, deciding to actually make the jump to getting into it. So back before my husband and I were even like engaged or got married, I decided that I was going to stop my birth control and then some other like prescription medications that I was on at the time that I just felt like I no longer needed. The birth control was causing me a lot of unwanted symptoms. Like I just didn't really feel like myself anymore. I was having breakthrough bleeding, which was annoying because like one of the whole points in being on the pill was to know when your cycle was coming. So that was annoying. And then it was causing me to have these really debilitating migraines where it would like completely put me in the bed. I couldn't communicate effectively. I couldn't function. And I just knew that that was part of what was causing that. And I was in a place where I felt safe enough and like educated enough on my own body and my cycle and things to go off of the birth control. And when I did that, I did it cold turkey, which I absolutely would not recommend. I didn't know that at the time, but I just decided to stop and I did. And I lost my cycle for over 9 months. Every time I brought concern up about this to either my primary doctor or my OBGYN, I was really just met with, well, if you want to have a period every month, then you just need to go back on the birth control pill. And I was like, well, I went off of it for a reason. I had learned enough at that time to realize that the bleed you have when you're on a birth control pill is not an actual period. Although we weren't there yet, I knew that my now husband and I were like headed towards being serious, getting married, wanting to have kids. And it scared me that I had went so long without a cycle. I was worried that, when I did want to become pregnant, if something didn't change, that was going to be a struggle. And so I obviously wasn't getting the help and support I needed from my traditional provider, and I started to seek it out in other places. I read blogs, I listened to podcasts, I read articles online. There weren't a lot of right now, I feel like we do have a lot of information available to us through like Instagram and TikTok and just different places. This was many years ago. It was honestly trying to think, probably about 8 years ago at this point. And so this is just very different now compared to back then. But I found functional medicine through all of that research, and I was already a nurse at the time. And I was like, wow, this is so different from the approach I see taken every day in my job. Like, it very much, to simplify it, it's very much a preventative and wellness model of care, functional medicine is, as opposed to the sick care model that I was seeing every day in my job. And just like the more that I talked to the women around me about what I was struggling with and the fact that my period just went totally MIA and I was working on bringing it back and why I went off the birth control in the first place, the women around me were like, yeah, me too. Like, tell me more. Tell me what's working for you. How are you? I had the same thing happen and I just ended up going back on the pill, but I don't really like that I'm on it. And it really just opened my eyes to the fact that there was more education needed in this area. So then that was like constantly in the back of my mind. And I just continued to listen to a lot of podcasts and read books and educate myself. But I didn't really take any action on it yet. So then fast forward several years to when I had my daughter, who will be 6 this year. Had a great pregnancy with her, had a good delivery. But postpartum recovery was it wasn't, I don't know. It was my first time. I think I just didn't know what to expect. And again, I just wasn't there was no support really. There was no guidance. And I kind of turned back to functional medicine to handle some of the fatigue and then the hormonal ups and downs that you go through postpartum. And again, there was just a lot of people around me that were like, yeah, tell me more. Tell me what you're doing. I have this issue coming up. What advice would you give me? And it just kind of evolved into this business supporting other women and other moms around me that I love so much.
That is a big journey. And again, I would love to know, what was it like to leave the registered nurse experience that you were that position that you had and jump into this completely, not completely different, but kind of a different world in this functional world that you're in now?
Yeah, so I didn't completely leave nursing, and honestly, I still haven't left nursing completely. Right now, I have a job as a nurse educator where I train staff that they hire to do a specific job called utilization management. So, I don't work bedside with patients anymore. And when I first started my business, I wasn't in a role where I was working bedside with patients. So I can't really say that, that I felt a big difference in my job as a nurse as I started my business and as I learned more about functional medicine, because I just wasn't in roles and haven't been since then where I was interacting directly with patients. But even just in the years when I wasn't doing anything formally, but I had learned and educated myself on functional medicine in an informal way, it impacted the way that I shared education with my patients. Patient education is something that a nurse does day in and day out, almost through the entirety of your shift. You're constantly educating someone on something. And I started to just kind of dig deeper with my patients, make sure that I was explaining things a little further, encouraging them to listen to their body and teaching them how to advocate for themselves if they were being met with resistance or not the help that they were looking for. And also take the time to not just teach on whatever their acute problem was that they were maybe in the hospital for on that day or that visit, but take time to, in general, educate on some preventative health things, because functional medicine is really focused on optimizing wellness, and prevention is a huge part of that.
Yes, for sure. And so do you bring that approach of the root cause and optimizing wellness to the nurses that you currently are teaching?
They are in very different roles, so it doesn't really apply to them because they also are not working directly with patients. So it's something that I kind of can't bring to them.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
And so how in the world, though, did you, because it still seems like a big jump. And so, because not a lot of people know about Dutch testing, the hair mineral testing is still something that some people know about, but like not too many people know about. Mm-hmm. So how did you get into those more like alternative style tests versus what's more mainstream and common?
I learned about the Dutch test when I had lost my own cycle and was just doing research. I came across the Dutch test at that time and I really wanted to get it done. And so I went to an appointment with my provider and was asking, like, can you order this for me? And they had no idea what I was talking about. I remember pulling it up on my phone and showing it to them. And they were just like, yeah, I don't know. We don't do that here. And I was so frustrated. And so I dug into it more and found that like only certain providers could do that for you. And so after I got trained in functional medicine, then I could take even more like specialized courses in different types of testing. And Dutch testing and HTMA testing were two that I pursued. Sorry.
No worries. That was me like last week.
My allergies have been giving me fits this week. It's like I just choked on air.
You're totally fine. Again, literally, that was me last week with coughing too. So I'm right there with you.
Goodness. I don't know where I was and what I was saying, really.
You were talking about the test, finding a practitioner who would actually order it for you.
Yeah. So I decided that to be able to like effectively work with women and give them like the insight that I felt like they needed and the insight that I wanted to have when I was in their position and I was struggling knowing that my hormones were imbalanced, I wanted to be able to offer them as much data as I could. So I got trained on Dutch testing and then HTMA testing. And I still feel like for people that are struggling with hormone imbalance, it's two of the best tests that you can do to help get you that insight to get to the root of like, what is the imbalance and then why is that imbalance happening? So then you can take really customized steps to fix it.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember I first learned about the Dutch test years ago now in my women's health coach certification. And I had never heard of it before. And I know that it's still not widely accepted with a lot of medical practitioners because they don't necessarily love the way that it tests and like what it tests exactly. Can you speak to what your experience with that has been, especially because you are kind of still in the medical world and you're using more of these alternative tests? Or you can talk about HTMA as well. Either of those.
I think it really just comes back to a lack of knowledge around it because there are traditional providers that have taken, the step to learn more about Dutch testing and like what it is. And they are very receptive to it. I think sometimes providers that, like if you go to your appointment and you're just asking them like I was, like, can you order this for me? Is this something that you do? I would like to have this done. There's almost this factor of like intimidation because it's something that they don't know, but they kind of like should know. And it's not their fault that they don't know because it's just not, it's not something that they are being taught about as they are doing their training and becoming a doctor and going through residency. I think that there's more awareness about it now than there ever was. And I think that's going to continue over the next several years because so many more people are seeking a more holistic approach to their health and they're learning about these tests on their own and asking for them. So doctors are kind of being forced to be like, I got to Google that later and see like what that is, because their patients are asking for it. Dutch specifically is really great about having their own like research studies to back up, their testing and their methods. And I think that once the providers get to review that and kind of dig in a little bit, it's not like it's some, I don't know, test that there's no validity for. And HTMA testing is the same. It's actually been around a lot longer than Dutch testing. And, there's research there to back both of them up. It's just that the providers have to be seeking that out.
Yeah, no, definitely 100% agree with that as well. And I think maybe we should back up just for a second. And can you just explain really quick, what is a Dutch test and what is an HTMA test for those who might not know what they are?
Yeah, of course. So Dutch testing is a dried urine comprehensive hormone test. It is done by taking urine samples yourself at home, and they like send you these little cards. You let it dry after you've collected the sample, and then it all gets mailed back into the Dutch lab. And what they're checking with that test is your female hormone levels. So you're going to get an estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. You're also going to get an evaluation of your stress hormones, so your cortisone levels. And then there's various other like metabolites and organic acids that they include in that test as well. It's all like, the information that you need to know like what your hormone levels are. Then HTMA testing is hair tissue mineral analysis. That's done taking a very small sample of your hair, cut kind of at the root, so at your scalp, sent off to the lab. That's evaluating your minerals and your heavy metals. And it's pretty big report that you get back with those. There's about 38 to 40 levels that you get a report on. And it gives you insight into a lot of the different body systems and how they're functioning. So things like metabolism, thyroid, adrenals, which is where your cortisol, your stress hormone, is made, your overall blood sugar balance. And I always kind of explain it like Dutch testing tells us what your hormone levels are, but then the HTMA test helps us figure out why that imbalance is occurring. So we might see on your Dutch test that you've got some estrogen dominance going on. And we can even see that maybe you're having a little bit of trouble, like getting rid of the extra estrogen that you have. HTMA can then come alongside that and kind of just plug in some other pieces. Like you might have indicators on your HTMA test that digestion is hard for you because you're not producing enough stomach acid because you don't have the minerals that your body needs to make the stomach acid. So it's just really nice when we get to marry both of those together and know the what and the why.
Yeah, that was a great way to put it. That using them in conjunction with each other is really great, because I see so many people who do like either or, which is fine. It still gives you great information, but by using them together, it just amplifies that even more. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just trying to think, I'm putting myself in the position of being a mom or being a woman who is having certain symptoms occur and like wants to get down to the root cause of it, but doesn't even know where to start with that. What do you tell women who like know that something is off, but they don't even know what is off? And like maybe their doctor is, or like their PCP isn't really helping, or their OBGYN isn't really understanding either. Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing to do is, number one, if you are feeling that off and you're still on birth control, then transition yourself off. And of course, like, as I said earlier, I definitely wouldn't do what I did 9 years ago or 8 years ago and go off cold turkey. Like, you kind of need to prep your body for that transition. HTMA testing can be a great way to get started with that, because you can see like where your deficiencies are, make a plan for, a month or two to really hone in on those and then transition off. But for people that are already off of birth control and are feeling off or like something is imbalanced or wrong, my first question to them would be like, how familiar are you with the menstrual cycle phases and what you're supposed to experience and feel during those phases? Because that's another big piece of something that like we're just not taught as women. And, you know, kind of the standard education that is given is that every woman is supposed to have a 28-day cycle and ovulate on day 14. Well, that is not always the case. I mean, it's a large percentage of women. I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it's a big percentage of women that do not have a 28-day cycle. And so if that's the only thing you're going by, you might think that your cycles are always irregular because you're just tracking them thinking they're supposed to come every 28 days. But if you really tune into your own body and you track your own cycle and your own habits is not the right word, but like your own patterns is what I'm trying to say. You might find that you're actually regular, but your cycle lasts 32 days every month or every cycle. So I think that, like just trying to like tune into your own self first and then learn what is the menstrual cycle supposed to look like and how am I supposed to feel at each of these phases, and familiarizing yourself with that first is a great first step. Now, beyond that, or to go just like a little bit deeper, mineral replenishment is huge for every client that I've ever worked with. And there are definitely ways that you can start to replenish your minerals without testing. And a lot of times that's going to look like adding more fruits and vegetables to your diet, because that's a big place where we get our minerals. So I typically tell people also that they can incorporate mineral drinks, usually just like once a day. And there's different options for how you can do that. There's versions that you can make yourself at home. You can also buy the pre-made mix, because that's what I prefer because I'm busy. I like to do the homemade ones every once in a while, but for just everyday use, I think that, a mix is just easy to throw in water and go. So that would kind of be where I would start.
Yeah, that is so good. And I know I take it for granted sometimes because I've been in the fertility awareness educator world for a long time now. So it's like, I understand what's happening. So therefore, sometimes I put it on others that it's like they understand what's happening too. But a lot of times, like you're saying, it's true where women aren't given this education, so they don't really know. And like right now, I'm working with a mom. She just had, I believe it's her 8th or 9th child. I can't remember which number it is. And I was going through the education portion of it. And I was like, please stop me if this is like new info, or if this is information you already know, and I can skip over it. And she was like, Brigid, I've never learned any of this. And I've had 9 babies. And I was like, okay, we're going to learn all about fallopian tubes and ovaries and the cycles and like what menstruation actually is and what happens to your hormones. And yeah, so I think that what you're saying there is so good because, again, so often we don't have this information. And if we don't have the information, we don't even know what cycles should look like. We just consider them to be these annoying things that we have, when really it's more of like that 5th vital sign. And, the book, I can't remember her name, the author of it, and Lily Nichols wrote a book on fertility and, what's it called? Eating for Fertility or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I had the opportunity to be an advanced reader for it. And that's one of the big things that, like, reading it, I could see how this can help so many people, because it really showed, like what you were just saying, is that not everybody has that 28-day cycle. People might have like a 26 or 32 or whatever day cycle. It's really just a matter of what's normal for you. And then from there, if something is abnormal, what do you do about it? So yeah, I love that answer that you just gave there too. And so with that in mind, what are you noticing as a functional root cause coach, nurse? the biggest thing that you see from women? Is it like PCOS? Is it Hashimoto's? Is it Graves' disease? Like, what's the biggest thing that you're finding that you help women heal from?
I think that PCOS is a big one. I think that's often coming back to some adrenal issues with cortisol and or blood sugar issues, some insulin resistance. And I think that sometimes PCOS is, I don't want to say misdiagnosed, but maybe just overly used as a diagnosis, because I think it's like an easy label that people can get when they are having cycle irregularities. I think they just kind of, I don't know, providers tend to be like, oh, okay, well, you have PCOS. And some people may or may not have ever even had like an ultrasound to go along with that, which in my humble opinion should be like required to give someone a PCOS diagnosis. I would say that is definitely a big trend. Aside from that, from a mineral perspective, low potassium is huge. And I didn't expect that, I don't think, when I got into minerals and got into the test, like HTMA testing world of things. I don't know why, but that one kind of surprised me that I was seeing it so consistently in my clients. And we need potassium for a lot of different things. And I always tell people, we have a sodium and potassium pump on every single one of our cells. And that usually will like trigger some core memory from like middle school or high school science class where we learned that the very first time. But that pump on our cell is responsible for like what can come in and go out of the cell. So obviously we want that process to be working efficiently. And if we don't have enough sodium or enough potassium, it can't work effectively. I think that's probably two of the biggest trends that I see in my clients.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I always do think of that where it's like the sodium potassium pump, and like we had a little song that we sang, and so that's what I always remember. So why do you think potassium, and why are women so depleted in it? Maybe you don't know the answer.
Well, yeah, it's just, we use it for so many things. And then like sodium and potassium both are used up in our stress response. You know, just not even just women, but just like as a human in 2025, we're under a lot of stress, and we are met with things that are not just like typically what you think of as stress. Like when I say stress, I think people's default is to think like, I've had a really stressful day at work. I've got all these projects to go on. I have deadlines to meet. I have all this stuff to do, and I don't have enough time to do it. That is stress. Absolutely. But stress is also not eating enough. It's also the products sometimes that we're putting on our body. It's the air we breathe outside that we can't even really control. It's, the also like mental and emotional, like what I'm getting at is that we have a lot of different stressors coming at us from a lot of different places. And our body is not able always to keep up with that demand. Or that need for enough sodium and potassium to like respond appropriately. And eventually we just kind of use up our stores that our body has.
Yes. And can you talk to me more about this under eating thing? Because I feel like this is a big, there's so many different fads out nowadays, especially with like the intermittent fasting, the like staying under certain, like counting your macros, like taking pictures of it, and your phone like tracks it for you, like all these different things. Tell me more about this, please.
Yeah, this is also super common. Clients that I work with, that's one of the first things that we do when I work together with someone, because like when we start working together, we've got to get your testing done, and then we're kind of in this waiting period to get your results back. So I take that time to work on the foundations of good hormonal health. And the first thing we talk about is nutrition. What are you putting in your body? How much? And we do kind of like a little 3 to 5-ish day audit. Just your normal average day. What are you eating and how many calories does that come out to? Then we take a look at your TDEE. So basically like the amount of calories that your body needs to just function throughout the day. And then we're looking at like, okay, how are we matching up here? Are you under eating or are you overeating? And it's very surprising the number of women that are under eating unintentionally. Like they're not even trying to diet. They don't realize that they're under eating. A lot of that, especially for my clients that are moms, comes from how busy they are during the day. You know, we're trying to get everybody up and ready and out the door. Taking care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves, or we're feeding kids lunch and then we're not even like fixing ourselves a lunch. We're just kind of like snacking off their plates and what they don't eat. And it's not that you are intentionally saying, I'm only going to eat 1,100 calories, 1,200 calories, but you just are. And then there is the other group of women that has been taught that in order to be healthy and lose weight, they need to consume 1,200 calories or less a day. And it's not enough to fuel our body. And when our body isn't getting enough, it doesn't feel safe. And if our body doesn't feel safe, it can't produce or balance our hormones effectively at all.
Yes, that last part is so big. And especially for moms who segue for a second, for moms who did have a traumatic birth experience, or even PTSD, really, your brain needs those calories, because especially if you had PTSD, that's a literal brain injury, and your body can't repair it's a literal injury. Like you can see it on a scan. And so your body can't repair that unless it has the appropriate nutrients. Oh, here I go now too. And so the appropriate nutrients are going to be those fats, really. They're going to be the other vitamins, minerals, things like that. And so by under eating, it's not only harming your, like I say your physical body, but I'm going to say like your head down. It's really affecting everything, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It all is going to be affected. So I just wanted to do that little segue there.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I mean, neither one of us touched on carbs, but that's a huge thing right now too. Everybody's still like encouraging people to cut carbs and go low carb. And I think we lose somewhere along the way that like carbs are actually our body's preferred energy source. We are meant to have and consume carbs. And when you're either not eating enough of those or you've tried to cut them out completely, you're depriving your body from its preferred energy source.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. We actually have a talk with our kids about this, of like, they're little, so they don't understand the like scientific part of it, but we do like long energy and short energy. So like we talk about protein and fiber being like long energy versus carbohydrates are like short, quick energy. And neither of them is bad. Neither of them is better than one another. They're just different. And like, so we talk all about that. So I think that some adults also need to remember that too, of like carbs aren't bad. Just like fats aren't bad, just like other things aren't bad. They're all needed for us to actually function. You mentioned calculating the minimum calories a day. So for those listeners who don't really get that and understand what that means, they might have that like 1,500 calories or 2,000 calories and that's it in their brain. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I can. And I don't tell my clients that they have to go by like a hard and fast rule, because I don't have my clients track long term. I think that can turn into a whole like disordered eating habit in itself. So like I said, we'll start with just, 3 to 5 days of tracking, without a goal in mind. Like literally just put in here what it is you're eating on an average day. We'll talk about the numbers later on. So then I use a tool. I think it's just tdee.com. It's a calculator that's free for anybody to use on the internet. It asks you like your height, your weight, your age, and your normal activity level. When you put all that in there, it will take you then to a web page that gives you some recommendations for calories. And I like that one because it does then break it down in like, I think there's 4 different categories, like sedentary, minimally active, moderately active, and very active, or something along those lines. And it gives a calorie range for that. And I always tell my clients that, one of our biggest goals when I'm working together with someone is to teach them how to tune into their body and listen to what their body is telling them, because our bodies are very smart. They communicate with us, but we have to listen. And so I never want like this lesson on calories to work against that. But I do think it helps for people that are just like, they've never tracked calories before. They've never done macros before. They don't have any context. It helps for a few days or maybe even a couple weeks to just help give some context and a guideline, maybe like a buffer of where to start to make sure that you're getting enough. And then typically, I tell people to stop tracking and then just kind of pay attention to your body. Like we do a whole lesson on prioritizing protein, making sure you're getting enough fiber. And I really think, you may or may not agree with this, but I think for the most part, like if you get your protein and your fiber in place first, fats and carbs kind of take care of themselves in terms of like, am I eating too much or, not enough? I think if you get protein and fiber locked in first, then the rest kind of takes care of itself if you're listening to your hunger cues.
I would 100% agree with that. I work with a health coach for myself, and her saying is break fast like a king whenever you feel hungry first. Like that's your first hunger cue. So break fast like a king, lunch like a prince, and supper like a pauper. And it really is true when I actually do that and I eat a big breakfast and I eat whatever. And then usually, honestly, I'm not really hungry for lunch and I'm not even really hungry for dinner because I've gotten in everything that I need. And if I am hungry later on, I don't feel like snacking. I don't even feel like eating that much because I don't need that much. And so going back, like you were saying, like figuring out your body's cues again is so important. But it's really hard. And I struggled with an eating disorder for 5 years. So it's like, I know where you're coming from if you're struggling with this, but it really does make a huge difference. And I know some people will say like, well, I'm not hungry first thing in the morning. And I totally believe you. You're probably not, because your hunger cues are probably all out of whack. When in reality, like we kind of need to switch those back. And then your metabolism will also come back to where it should be as well.
Yeah, if you're not waking up and hungry within like an hour, that's a big sign to me that your thyroid is not functioning appropriately. And your thyroid's what controls your metabolism. So
I have this idea of like breakfast has to be like eggs and sausage and toast and like potatoes and all this stuff. And after a while, I'm like, I don't want to eat this stuff anymore. So again, it sounds so silly, but it's like I've had to really switch my own ideas of like, it's okay to eat hamburgers for breakfast. It's okay to eat like whatever it is for breakfast. And like your body doesn't care. It just wants that fuel. And if you give it the proper fuel, everything else within reason is going to fall in line. So even if you are struggling with a lot of things, like your body wants to heal itself as long as you give it the right fuel for that healing.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Okay, cool. And so as we begin to wrap up, you had mentioned supplements. So I just want to touch on that really fast. Well, you hadn't mentioned it. You had written it down for me. And so tell me more about this supplements and like taking random supplements.
Yeah. So with minerals and my study in minerals, what I learned was that many of our minerals have interchangeable relationships and dependent relationships. So meaning like if one goes up, it causes another one to go down because our body's constantly trying to maintain like this level of homeostasis where it does feel safe. And when you're taking supplements without any data to back up your need for a supplement, you don't really know for sure if your body needs that. And I think there's this really big misconception because supplements are not like regulated. You don't have to have a prescription for them, that they're all safe to take in any amounts, just like willy-nilly at any point. And you can actually be causing yourself more symptoms or more problems by taking random supplements and not really knowing if you need them or not. you could be taking a mineral or a vitamin that you actually already have an excess of in your body, which is causing a different mineral or vitamin to be at a deficient level because of the way those relationships work. And you would just have no idea. So, I mean, there are a few things that I think are pretty safe across the board to take without testing. But for the most part, I think testing is necessary, and then following what those results say to really customize what you're taking, as opposed to doing a general multivitamin. I don't typically recommend multivitamins because the way those are like put together, sometimes the amounts of certain vitamins or minerals that are in them just like don't make sense for what the body needs, or they are like the ratios together compared to one another, like the calcium compared to the magnesium levels, like they just don't make sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the big things too, is like trying to get your food or trying to get your nutrients in via food instead of supplementation, which can be admittedly difficult, especially during certain seasons like first trimester or anything like that. But that really should be the priority, is that food, less of the supplementation. Same thing with like smoothies and stuff like that too. Like if you can eat like the actual food instead of like protein, instead of putting protein powder in a smoothie. Now, I still love my smoothies. We make them for desserts and stuff like that. But I always try to get that protein in first, like the food in first, before adding in any sort of supplementation.
Yeah, okay. I like that.
And so as we wrap up, I always ask one last question, then we'll chat about how they can get in contact with you. And that question is, what do you want the discerning mother to know?
So I think it's so important, and we've touched on this already, but I just want to reiterate it. Our body is always speaking to us. It's always sending us little messages, communications, and we need to tune into that and listen, because as I kind of said before, our body is really smart and it will kind of guide us and tell us what it is it's needing or what it is it's missing. We just have to learn how to tune in and listen to that in a world that's trying to teach us to ignore all of our symptoms and basically ignore what our body is telling us.
Yes, so good. So hard to do, but so good. All right, so how can everybody get a hold of you if they want to learn more? I know you have so many awesome like bundles and everything that you have going on is so cool. So can you tell us all about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for the person that is feeling like they're a little bit off, a great place to start is my Hormone Reboot resource. It's 5 days. It's education that goes just like a little deeper on some topics than we have here on the podcast. But it's a great place to just get started rebalancing your hormones and kind of honing in on some of those foundations of good hormonal health. And then if you want to just kind of like come hang out with me in the day-to-day, I like to spend time on Instagram. I do a lot of posting there, announce, classes and content. I have my own podcast, so I share about the episodes there. And you can find me at Wellness with Vanda on Instagram.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that and sharing some of your knowledge. We appreciate it so much. And thanks for being on the show. All right.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
All right, if you loved this episode, and Vanda gave us so much great information, if you want more of this, then you definitely want to join the Dwelling Place online community. It's my online community where you get to be with other moms. We have monthly experts come in. We have soul core classes. We have sister circles that you have access to a few different courses, some different resources like that. And Vanda is going to be coming back into the community on February 12th, 2026, where she is going to give us an introduction to cycle syncing. You will definitely not want to miss this. You can find how to join the community in the show notes below. If you have any questions, reach out to me on Instagram. We cannot wait to see you inside because, again, the introduction to cycle syncing is going to be amazing, and can't wait to see you inside of the Dwelling Place.